Welcome, trusted advisors. This is the podcast where we explore what it really takes to build, grow and sustain a thriving financial planning business. Every fortnight, you'll hear candid conversations with the leaders, innovators and trailblazers of our profession. People who have navigated the challenges, embraced the opportunities and are willing to share what they've learned along the way. If you're curious, ambitious and committed to raising the bar in advice, you're in the right place. Welcome, trusted advisors. Today we're bringing together 4 of the leading technologists in our profession. People who are not just talking about the future of advice technology, but actively building it. Joining me are Gardner from Collins SBA, who in episode 4 spoke about developing a Salesforce-based CRM platform tailored for financial advice firms, now officially launched under the name Rubica. Downey from Direct Wealth, who in episode 11 shared his vision for Halosoft, an AI platform dedicated entirely to the practice of financial planning. Stephen Bell, who in episode 20 unpacked his journey in creating Captegra, another Salesforce-driven CRM built to help advisors streamline operations. And Elliott from Meldus, who in episode 25 explained how he's bringing AI tools and practical expertise to help advice firms scale more effectively. Between them, this group represents a powerful intersection of CRM innovation, AI development and practical implementation inside advice firms. In this roundtable, we'll explore what's working, where the bottlenecks are and what the future might look like when technology is embedded deeply into the way advisors deliver value. Let's dive in. Welcome, Pat, Nick, Stephen and Glenn. I said it in the order that you've all appeared as guests on the podcast so far. So welcome back to the Trusted Advisor podcast. Can I start by asking, I'll start with you, Pat, giving you a first cab off the rank when we started these podcasts about a year or so ago. Tell me what you're focused on now. When we spoke back in the day, episode 4, I think it was, you were working on a Salesforce-based platform, as I just said in the intro, and you've since come out and called that Rubica. Tell me what you're focused on right now and what you're trying to put to the market with that software.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. And hey, everyone. I guess I'll go back a tiny bit to give some context to it. So, Pat, a retired financial advisor, now head of tech at the Collins SBA group. We've been running what is now multiple businesses on the Salesforce platform for just over 5 years now. So I've turned that configuration, integrations, as well as the mistakes and the missteps and therefore those lessons along the way into a separate business called Rubica. So that's a combination of an advanced Salesforce overlay or package, an enterprise middleware or Wacado, which we love, delivered as a cost-sharing model. So standing on the shoulders of multiple giants here to deliver something that gets businesses either up and running on the platform quickly. So it's always a challenge to do that with Salesforce or just enterprise CRM. So in a fully functional way as well, or just back on track if they've tried going at it alone and not got it to where they want it to be. So whether that's through, functionality or just falling victim to that sort of Salesforce plus fallacy, and just to give some context to that fallacy, it's just the belief that I feel that it's just one more add-on, like you buy it and then it's the next add-on that's going to change the game for you and finally make that platform deliver on expectations, when in reality it often drives firms into that further unnecessary complexity and just spiraling costs. So trying to keep the cost down and just deliver something that actually works, but then use the power of the network as well to have the best idea win. And we want 10 firms to love it, not 100 firms to tolerate it. So I think that's a key difference too, trying to make sure that we have proper advocates of the platform and just get these firms onto a platform that's enterprise grade and get it working. And I can just stop doing pep talks about why Salesforce is the right platform and stop doing demos on, this looks cool and how do we get it? So it's finally a solution to that. And we've spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and I feel that we've achieved that. So I don't even know if that answers your question, Rob, but and hello to the 3 other guests on the pod. Probably give you some airtime.
No, it does, Pat. And yes, the point you make there about having a best of breed tech stack. I know that Stephen will have a comment about tech stacks. We talked about that at the podcast I recorded with Steve, but just the fact that you can really blow up your P&L too. There's so much you can do with tech, and it's just a matter of making sure you do something workable without exploding your technology budget. Going with you, Nick Downey, next. You're a former Iris and X-Plan aficionado. You've jumped out into the world of financial planning, and now you've joined Direct Wealth and you're building out Halosoft, which is an AI platform, and you're really dedicated to try and advance the way AI can become a really highly productive tool for the purposes of financial advice businesses. And you guys have really, as I understand it, have gone back to really granular bare basics, like trying to rebuild the whole system from the ground up using AI. So I'm really keen to get an update on where you guys are at. Nick, give us an update.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So yeah, I guess we've gone in a slightly different direction and probably a fairly brave approach, I guess is one kind of way of describing it in terms of, doing the DIY. So yeah, at Direct Wealth, we were looking at going in terms of some of the major existing CRMs and we've decided to kind of tip our toes into going a full custom build, which is led through AI. Which is the kind of the genesis of the Halosoft as a business, which is a separate entity now that we've set up outside of Direct Wealth. So the thing that we're working on initially is just kind of stepping into market with a fairly simple solution, which is what everyone else has really been doing in terms of file note automation with AI. And that was really just to submerge ourselves into that space in terms of building something custom. But we're now kind of shifting our focus into what has traditionally been the CRM functionality and starting to build out something which we call Advice Ally, which is that approach in terms of really embedding AI into the workflow of advice. And so helping both back office from administration tasks like file loading and account opening, form filling, and also assisting the advisor through the actual journey of the advice production. So as you're collating data into that process in terms of meetings with the clients or phone calls or doing research, feeding that into AI to help assist the journey of the advisor and also doing your checks and balances as you go. So it's really exciting. It's definitely learning a lot in terms of building stuff from scratch. Obviously my background, like working with Xplan and Coin and Advisor Logic, those kind of off-the-shelf solutions. So it's been a really interesting experience. And bringing our first product to market being Meeting Ally has been a journey as well. So definitely keeping us busy.
I can say something about Meeting Ally, Nick, because we have beta tested it, put it through its paces, and we like it. In fact, we had one of our young, bright, talented future advisors who's currently in an associate role give it a test drive and really came out shining relative to what we were using and are still using, which I won't name, but we're pleased to see how much progress you've made with that. I know you went deep on it and it's come out looking absolutely smick. So well done on that. Meeting Ally is obviously your first part to market, but we'll look forward to seeing the rest of it as it rolls out. Steve, over to you with Captegra. You're another Salesforce man. Your Inzumo background means you've got an intimate familiarity and understanding with everyone's pain with Xplan, but you've now gone and said, well, let's go and build something with Salesforce, which is a market-leading CRM, obviously. And you were all about trying to make sure people's operations were streamlined from end to end. What did you call it again? It's called a technology
process stack.
Process stack. So it's about having things run in a streamlined way as opposed to sort of building things on top of each other.
Yeah, and getting your process right and then finding the tech to fit into the process rather than, a lot of groups go out and look for tech and then try and build the process around that. So that's kind of our view. And I guess our journey at the moment is very similar to Pat's and Nick's. We are using the Salesforce platform. We've built a lot of process automation inside there. And I guess our big project at the moment is very similar to everyone else, using AI for everything, the file notes, the meeting notes, the AI for SOAs and advice. But we're creating our own presentation cloud so we can use that and pull in data from all sorts of different places into a presentation. So that's our really big project on at the moment.
Yeah. And Glenn, we spoke relatively recently, I think only a couple of episodes ago, and obviously your time at Practify as a CEO there and founder, and now you've stepped out, you're still a board member there, but now you've built another business called Meldus, which is really about bringing AI tools and practical expertise to help advice firms. So really keen to get your perspective on what you're working on right now that's helping advice firms really make hay with what the technology can now provide.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thanks for having me once more, and great to be here with the rest of the panel. It's good to see you guys. As you know, I'm a nerd from way back. I'm a career technologist. Unlike much in this industry, I'm not a former advisor. I've done an awful lot of work with advisors now for quite a long time, but really I'm a nerd at heart. And so from technical architect and CTO and UI designer and database designer right down to coding and test automation and I love being across it all. And it's been a great opportunity since just kind of pulling back from my management role at Practify into a board level to be able to get kind of back down to the tools and kind of go back to the art that started it all off for me. And it's been a fascinating journey to bring, I guess, all of that kind of founder-led best practice to the advice space here in Australia. There's a level of kind of expertise and that I can offer, and there's some fascinating projects going on that I'm able to now get involved in on a fractional basis, on a fairly lightweight basis, before firms go in and make huge technology investments, big commitments, long-term projects. Just being able to help them and advise them upfront around the best architecture, the best way to engage with technical partners, the best way to evaluate them upfront, and of course, inevitably these days, to apply AI at every step in that architecture and in the development project itself. It's a question that is still not asked often enough in vendor evaluations, to ask firms, how are you guys using this internally? How has it streamlined your business in the last 2 or 3 years? And if it hasn't totally transformed the way that they operate, then something's wrong there and you're probably paying too much for them. So my job is to provide that sort of enlightenment early on in the budgetary deployment so that it's deployed for long-term effect.
Yeah, it's a great question to ask, isn't it? Because if people are rolling it out to others, they should be really having adopted it themselves and making their business so much more efficient as well. So when we have our quarterly board meeting at HBH, first question we ask, other than going around the table and asking personal and best business news over the past 90 days, the first question that we ask is, what's working? What's working right now? So you get that chance to take a step back and say, right now in the business, what's really working really well for us right now, and taking that sort of appreciative inquiry approach, starting with what's good before we go to what's not working, because everyone wants to go what's not working. But for you guys, each of you, starting going in the same order, Pat, if you want to kick off, what's really working for you right now in your business with Rubica and the Collins SBA team? What are you really nailing right now?
I think we've done a truckload of work on flows and automation and processes, all that sort of thing when it comes to using declarative tools in Salesforce and Ricardo. I think what's really worked is the big AI approach to integration. So being able to add those AI steps into those existing workflows, existing flows, existing processes, screens, etc., to really elevate them to do the things that they couldn't do before, rather than having to go back and reinvent the wheel and buy another tool, as I was talking before about the plus fallacy. But you can just embed that into the way that you're doing things so that you can either do things quicker, or a lot of the time you don't even realise that something's happening in the background that was a problem, maybe for me, not so much the actual end user. So maybe to give a couple of real examples. So I think I'll give an example in the accounting space. So every year we've turned the opportunity object in Salesforce into a proposal itself. So users will add the line items, they'll build out the proposal, put a Loom video with it, and they'll send it out without leaving the CRM. And it's not this time of year anymore, but sort of May, June, it'll come to renewal time. It's done based on a financial year basis. And they'll go to clone that or renew that proposal. And we've had some issues where, because we've been so flexible with our billing and sort of emulated what Practice Ignition does with, monthly billing or combination of on acceptance, recurring, etc., you've got some clients that are just bad payers. Like the invoices just fail month after month, and we've got automation there to recollect it based on the error code for Stripe. But it takes a lot of time for our team to go and say, hey, that thing that you signed on for, that payment's failed for the 5th time this year. Can we have our money, please? And it just eats into the actual margin and client experience, because it's just not a value-adding exercise or a great experience for anyone. So as part of that, I guess, renewal or cloning process, you click one button and it pulls together all of the context we have about that client for the last 12 months in the CRM. So it's just, the invoice status, the payment cadence, things like I mentioned last year, Rob, that we just rolled out Timely, which is a time tracking tool. So accountants, all the time entries against that client or household group where we might have not invoiced for that time. So are we writing that off? So it just gives you this pulse check of these 17, 20 data sources that, hey, you should probably think about these few things before you actually clone that opportunity or turn into a renewal opportunity. So you're not having to context switch the same frickin' tool. So you've got the context switching in other apps or separate apps, but then you've got the context switching within Salesforce, which is a problem within itself. So just trying to consolidate that together. Yeah, I think that's really changed the game for us and allowed us to implement AI, at least in the background, really quickly. And it probably lends itself to just the ability to, I guess, develop things internally as well, because you've got, once again, all the context. And that's, I guess, maybe one of the issues I take with some of these homegrown file noting tools, and Meeting Ally is an absolute exception because you've got that API first approach, Nick, but just the mindset that these products feel that advisors will just jump to this separate tool and go and have a play and upload their knowledge base or all this context and be happy to do that. And maybe they are, because NetWealth's research consistently suggests that we're using 15 bits of tech in the stack. But do they want to add a 16th piece? I'm not so sure. But to bring it back to what's working, it's definitely the ease of adding AI into an already sort of automated and existing stack, or process stack, as Stephen would say.
Yeah, and I have seen a bit of a demo there, Pat. You've shown us of how you've embedded AI into your CRM Rubica, and it's it's some pretty impressive stuff. I'm actually going to share a bit of that, if I hope you don't mind this. I haven't told you this already, but I'm going to share a bit of that when I speak at the Fitzpatrick's annual conference next month in Sydney. So it's a pretty good demo, and I'm sure others will be like, wow, that's possible now. So yeah, it's pretty cool tech you've built there. Nick, what about you? What have you guys really nailed? We know Meeting Ally is working because we've tested it and we love it and we're using it. So is that the one thing you can point to right now that you're really smashing out of the park, or is there other things you've worked on that we haven't yet seen that's really going well for you guys?
Yeah, I think what really works well, I think from, like, because I've worked with lots of practices over the years from a professional services perspective and coming into direct wealth, what is unique about that particular practice and what works really well for them is because they are actually quite low on their tech adoption. So it's like, because we look at direct wealth and they are quite a high volume business and do lots of acquisitions. And so a lot of people are like, what's the secret sauce? If it's not like something like a Meeting Ally or an AI solutions, like what really works well for direct wealth? And it comes down to process. And what I find is for direct wealth, they are very strict in terms of how the business operates. And even from an acquisition perspective, bringing in external businesses, the process is clearly defined. Like everybody knows what they need to be doing as part of the bigger machine. What works well for that is that in addition to everybody knowing what they're doing, is that they also have transparency on that process as well. So it's okay, you can look into the business and actually see that people are doing what they're meant to be doing. Because I kind of talk about the pillars, it's okay, it's the process, it's the transparency, and the last big piece is accountability. So it's to making sure that, yeah, if people aren't doing their jobs, they are called out. But conversely, if they're doing a good job, they're rewarded for it as well. So kind of dovetailing off what Pat was saying in terms of injecting AI, similar to where we started with Meeting Ally, and it probably goes into like where firms get stuck, is that, yeah, having a really great process and building strong process that followed with a high level of accountability gives us the platform to start building AI on top of that. So yeah, Meeting Ally, yeah, it's a very small slider, and the bigger piece for us is Advice Ally. But what's working well for us as we're starting to build out the components of, and I don't like calling it a CRM, to be honest. So I've stumbled across this term in like literally the last couple of days, where it's a group from the US, they're calling it relationship operating systems. And that's where it's, the CRM is really just data gathering. It's the system that you come to build relationships. And for me, that resonates really strongly. And so that for us is what we're building out in Advice Ally. But having that process, that foundation from direct wealth, I think that's what we're doing really well. So.
Yeah, and you're absolutely saying the same things that Steve will say in 1 second, because process is everything he said a moment ago, and he'll repeat it, because that process has got to be nailed down before you add technology, isn't it? Process first, technology second. So I love hearing that. And just for some context for our listeners, before we jump to Steve, just give us some context about the volume of acquisitions that Direct Wealth have been doing, just to give some context about how much that process has had to try and absorb.
Yeah, so Direct Wealth started in 2017 as a starting point with our founder, Simon Coombs. And from last count, it's above 40 acquisitions that we've done. Yeah, next month, we've got another 7 advisors joining. And that's probably the biggest constant, is that there's always acquisitions happening at Direct Wealth. That's what I say for Direct Wealth. The biggest problem from a technology perspective that I'm trying to solve for Simon ultimately is creating capacity for the business. And that capacity is what allows the room to buy more books. There's obviously lots of other like client experience and all that type of stuff, which is super important, and compliance and everything else. But like if I had to define it, it's creating capacity. There's obviously a lot of benefits that stem out of having room to grow.
Yep, Steve, you love hearing that. Process first, tech second. So tell us what you're doing. Tell us what Captegra's real strength point is right now in the market. What are you doing that's actually, you've really got nailed?
Yeah, I think this is another project we've got going on at the moment. Everyone knows we are process orientated. Nick, what you just said was music. We have a process mining tool that we're working on and we're trialing with a couple of clients at the moment, because we can sit down and run all of these workshops with clients and go, what's your process? At the end of the day, we all come out with the same thing because, every practice is generally the same. Legally, we have to do the same thing. But because inside Salesforce and our solution, we're doing every client communication, every file node, every meeting, we have all this data that we can run through this process mining engine and actually show a client or an advisor what their process is. And you expect to see something fairly close to the process that we've automated or the process that they've got on a workflow map. But 99 times out of 100, because clients, are always engaged differently, that it's this spaghetti of tasks and processes, no matter how much you try and automate. And that's giving us really good intel, because now we know, okay, well, here's the task that's happening outside of your process, 50% of the time. So let's work out how we can use, flows, automations, integrations, AI, whatever it is, to try and either remove that through portals or, some sort of other system, or how do we make it more efficient so that, again, as Nick said, you can get more capacity, more productivity. And it's amazing what we're finding in all of these clients and what they're doing. So it's going to be really powerful.
Yeah, being able to sort of strip back and see what the process truly is, and actually such an art in that, isn't there? Because everyone kind of builds this process. It becomes a bit of a Frankenstein over the years. You kind of get this cumbersome process and everyone just adopts it because that's what they've always done. But to be able to strip that back and interrogate and say what parts of this are adding value and what parts of this are just things we've done because we've always done them, and getting back to, first of all, finding what is the way we want to do this in the most streamlined fashion, and then we can add tech to try and make it a bit smoother and a bit more streamlined. So
yeah, and continually improve.
Yeah, and constant consideration to improve it. Yeah. And Glenn, what's working for you other than the fact you're getting some miles in now with your meniscus tear repair, and you're getting your running in, which I see on LinkedIn all the time. You're a regular runner. So other than that, what's really working in your world right now?
Oh man, I wouldn't set the bar for success around my running career, that's for sure. I've been really surprised at the cut through. We've kind of struck a chord, I think, recently. I spent a long time in the US, very US oriented journey with Practify over a long time, and just meeting and delivering solutions to hundreds and hundreds of advice firms there and here and other markets. And now just turning my attention back to conversations and consulting and technology engagements here in Australia. I'm so surprised that the language that we're speaking is resonating. I'm surprised at how open-minded the market is. It feels different to me than what it did 10 years ago when Practify started to launch. That now I can go to an advisory firm, sometimes larger ones, smaller ones, mid-size, and they're much more open-minded, and they're very, very open to what they don't know. They say, well, we've got this tool here and this integration here, and this is a problem over here, but we don't know what we don't know. That's so refreshing to hear. The blinkers are often people are open-minded as to what's possible. And I think that's part of this AI journey that we've been on now for a few years, but people have got their ears open as to what's possible. And we're in a really flexible and somewhat unique position to be able to show them what's possible in a really lightweight way that's unique to their requirements. Some will be more ambitious, and there can be little code deployment pieces where that's the best fit. Others, they need sort of point and click workflow automation tools that have AI oriented steps in them. Others need shrink wrap software in their architecture. And they all have unique needs, but the ability with the tools available to us now to move fast and be super nimble, not always require them to move holus bolus from this platform to that platform and go through major migration project, but to be able to say, okay, well, you've got a core platform there that's not perfect, but we can now work with that far more flexibly than we ever could before. So rather than go on a huge transformation project, let's be nimble. Let's do that piece and do that piece and do the automated file audit and the early stage SOA draft with AI and the meeting notes and the file notes and just piece these together in a very, very flexible and nimble way. I've just been so impressed at how open-minded firms are to that in a way that I just don't think they were 5, 7, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it speaks to what Pat was talking about there, is just about the flexibility that the new tools and the architecture that you can actually put together now, how software is building deliberately with an open architecture model in mind. They're trying to be a nice to play with piece of software so that they actually can become a part of an ecosystem. So they're not trying to be an all singing, all dancing software. So, and for me as a principal, thinking about technology spend, the fact that, as you've just described there, Glenn, the fact you can actually just plug in certain elements of the process and actually they're low cost, you can be nimble and you don't have to kind of just go, all right, I've got to do this big software transition from one big system to another big system and hopefully it works out, fingers crossed, because we're doing this massive transition. So it's a really nice time to think that technology can be playing nicely with us and not have to make enormous transitions necessarily. So where are then, I'm going to throw this to all of you and say anyone can jump in first here, but where are firms getting stuck? Where do you see people, what you're saying, Glenn, people are open, they're listening, they're actually really ready to make change. Where are firms getting stuck in your respective viewpoints? Who wants to jump in there first? You're also polite. Come on, Nick, give us.
Yeah, this probably draws from my experience working with like Advisor Logic and Xplan and Coin prior to that. So coming into a practice and saying, okay, like what's not working? Like, why does this feel harder than it needs to be? And it's the age old saying with advisors, like, okay, I spend more time running back office than I do seeing advisors. And I love seeing advisors. I hate doing the back office. So like, why am I working 80 hours a week and not doing what I'm loving? And so where I see it go wrong is, there's probably no surprise that is, it's the inconsistency in process.
Yeah.
Like, okay, people don't really know what they're doing. And I think that really resonates. What you mentioned, Steve, is the spaghetti. It's like, okay, there's one or two things. One, there's no process and you've got people doing things differently. And it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, we are doing a pretty similar process across the business. And if you allow for variances within there, that's going to slow things down. And what I've found from a software vendor perspective is that you have lots of advisors, even within the same practice, pushing on the software to try to get it to do different things. And so a lot of the time it's, okay, it's the software's fault. It's like, well, no, we haven't really kind of got consistency. We're not building off a good base. That's where I see processes from the starting point is not great. And so I guess probably like we were saying before, it's like, well, if you've got a bad process and you're trying to meld software on top of that bad process, you're going to get a bad outcome. So that's one point. Probably the second biggest thing is going probably back to Pat's point in terms of the technology stack, where it's kind of described it previously as a technology pile, where you just like what practices will end up doing. I've literally seen this time and time again. I believe the issue stems just from the incumbents really not doing a great job, unfortunately, and be it though I'm part of that problem, so I do carry some of the blame. But the issue is that practice will go, okay, I have a friction point in my process, and they'll look at that individual point and say, okay, well, what's the best of breed thing that I need to shove into to solve that problem? But the issue is they don't step back and look holistically. It's okay, well, you've solved that little problem with something that's really great and shiny, but you've actually made the whole process harder than it needs to be. And so it's kind of like the death by 1,000 cuts, where it's like they've gone in and they're kind of stuck in the day-to-day. And so when they take a step back, they're like, yeah, you've got 15 different systems or 20 different systems and you've duplicated all this kind of cross-pollination that's going on, and you've got no real single source of truth. So yeah, those who are bad process and trying to build something on top of that, your foundations are poor. And then probably secondly, the big one is you try to solve problems in isolation and throwing software at the problem to try and solve it, but you haven't taken a step back and gone, do you know what? You've actually made this holistically worse than what it is than just solving that individual problem. So yeah, that's probably the two things over the last 15 years that I've been kind of in that space that I see time in, time out.
I'm not the only one nodding my head here, Nick. That resonates, I'm sure, with a lot of people that'll be listening to, thinking we just need to look back at our process from first principles rather than just keep trying to solve little problems and creating this Frankenstein of processes. You guys all resonate with that point, that process is usually the starting point and that's where all the problems kind of stem from. Anyone else got anything to add there about what's getting people stuck in practices?
Rob, I see them getting stuck on leadership. Advice firms are being pitched so much, so often. They're being pitched by software vendors. They're being pitched by software development firms to do custom pieces of work. There's a bunch of consultants around. And they don't know what to make of all of these. And they don't know what they don't know. And I mean, I've done work recently helping advice firms understand these proposals being given to them. And often these are, say, from SaaS vendors with these modular proposal saying, yes, you need this core platform and you need this add-on, you need this add-on. And there's a level of leadership and expertise required to say, why do you need that third one? And maybe you need the core, but that third one, really, there are 3 opportunities out here that are way cheaper than that and far better. There's just a direction there that the industry is so often missing as to what's possible. It's similarly with custom development work. There are still just too many dev shops, not just in the industry, but in the tech industry generally, who still have not moved on the game. They've still got a bench of folks that they need to feed. And so they get a sniff of a development project and all of a sudden there's a team of 6 to 9 people that they have to put on there without the buyer understanding that AI should have totally transformed the way that they would deliver that project, which should pass on cost savings to them. There's direction that the industry is missing as to what's possible there and how to be a sensible buyer in this new landscape of what's available.
A lot of people would be nodding their head at that one too, because technology leadership doesn't really exist much in financial planning. It's really relying on vendors who have got a piece of software to sell to come and talk to you about what they've got. And it's the most challenging part, Glenn. And I think that's the niche you're kind of occupying now with your stepping out of the Practify world as the co-CEO, being able to help firms navigate those questions, because it's very perplexing. I mean, there's so many choices, and I see that net wealth survey of all the different pieces of software that are available. I'm kind of like, how would anyone have any idea what to do here? It's just so many choices. And so it is a challenging one, and you've got to step your way through, I guess, a bit of a matrix of questions you want to have answered. You've got to have an RFP, a request for proposal. It just helps people get more clarity about what they're chasing and whether the vendor software can actually meet that need. But technology leadership is certainly something that's a bit of a gap for advice firms, because we know how to give advice to clients on all things super and tax and the like, but technology is not typically a strong suit, but clearly that's not the problem for you guys. What else are you seeing, if anything, that's kind of getting firms stuck? Pat, Steve, you got anything you're seeing that's routinely not around process or around leadership?
If we think about the big chunky clunky tool that most of the industry or profession is still using, the stack ain't integrated and they want to use the tools around it or integrate with it. But you have businesses resorting to robotic process automation, or RPA, which I don't think is a scalable solution versus, modern APIs or just using automation in the background. I just think that's fraught with danger. But also you've got that big chunky clunky tool, which I won't name or dwell on it, but I think they've stopped issuing new API keys, which is just incredibly concerning in terms of being able to access your own data for the tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars you pay to use that tool. So that clearly supports, okay, well, let's try and find something separate because we can't integrate it anyway. Let's try and do something off the side here because we don't have the confidence in our existing CRM or tool that's being used as a CRM. And then that creates inconsistency in process as well. And the issue that I find with when you're building on an enterprise tool and you're trying to cater for a lot of things is you always need to cater for the path of least resistance. So if someone has Outlook open all day, advisors in particular, my goodness, or people that are allowed to delegate stuff, just fling this off, circumvent the process. Can you do this for me? Email internally, don't go through the process. And so how do you use AI? Well, that's what I'm trying to battle with. How can you use AI to pick up that slack so you don't have to force people down a process that you process mine or go through this exercise of saying this is how we do things every time, which is freaking awesome when you can get people to conform and do that. But it's so much harder. It really stifles progress. So I think that's where I'm sort of battling with it there. And then there's also the analysis paralysis. So just overnight, we've had ChatGPT Pulse or Plus or something. Really don't know what that is, but I think they're just throwing anything and just hoping that it will stick, because it's just like some of the examples they give are just, I know they've got the TAM is everyone in the world, but it's just like, what is going on? You've got Claude models now available in Copilot. So you've got these businesses and people that are making decisions and then questioning them probably the next day going, well, this thing's now changed and this thing's more advanced. Have I made the right call? And often you do nothing, but we know that more is lost with indecision than the wrong decision. So I think it's just so overwhelming and it can just feel like a Rubik's Cube that you can't stop twisting in your head because it's just so much happening.
I could never solve the Rubik's Cube myself, so I can relate. And as far as for our listeners that want to know what a TAM is, it's a total addressable market. There's another acronym, but it means everyone in the world can use this. So it's a big market. So hence why they're throwing all sorts of different tools at us. So Steve, what have you got that doesn't cover off on process, the complexity of different options and leadership in technology? Anything that you're seeing routinely that people are getting stuck on?
I think it's always the bright and sparkly. AI is the bright and sparkly. It has been for a while now. And now everyone's thinking that it's going to be the solution for everything. So we'll often get emails saying, can we use AI to merge data into a letter? Well, we don't need to merge data into a letter. We've been doing that for 25 years. Why would you look at AI as a solution to what you've already got? So 10 years ago, it was the bright and sparkly Zoom meeting. So now we've got a bright and sparkly of AI that everyone's trying to focus on, and every LinkedIn post and every conversation's about AI, and they think it's going to solve everything. And then maybe it will, but it doesn't need to be used for everything. There's still other solutions that are cheaper, easier, already there. So I think if advisors and users in general can stop focusing on the latest post they see on LinkedIn and just focus on the one thing they're still trying to solve from last week.
Yeah, it's fair to say that most users of technology use only a fraction of what the technology can do typically, isn't it? So in fact, I remember talking to you, Nick, back in the day. We were talking about taking on the plant production engine that Iris had purchased, which was Pathways. They'd purchased it and you called it Model Office. And I said, I'm not going to purchase that off you, Nick, until you give me someone that can implement it for me, because I know that I won't get it right trying to implement that thing. So make sure you give me someone that I can actually put in place to help us execute, because ideas are great and software is great if you know how to use it, but you need someone to help make sure you get that adoption. So that worked exceedingly well. A bit of history for us, but certainly made it work for us. And actually, there was more value from that gentleman, Sam Patterson, that you still work with today, that's brought to our firm. So shout out to Sam again for the work he did with us. Guys, we've talked about what's working, what's getting in the way. What should people focus on now? What's the next thing they should do? I think I've got an idea of what you've all said that I would probably start with, but whoever wants to start on this one. But what should firms do? Very first thing, next thing they should focus on.
Rob, my advice on that would be to stop hesitating and dive in. Don't be afraid to try something. Get some advice around where to start. That advice should be lightweight. And your first steps should be lightweight. To build knowledge as to what's possible, the best way to do it is to try. I've posted a few things recently around trying to give some guidance to the industry around how to prototype and to do proofs of concept that are low risk, or as close to zero risk as we can get it. Things like de-identifying any data before you pipe it into an AI workflow or an LLM at all. Separating production environments from pre-prod and test type of dummy environments. A little bit of setup like that goes an awful long way. And then experiment and prototype and try these things out. Talk to a variety of vendors, do trials of these different tools. And so many of these AI-oriented tools in the market are inexpensive to try, and they might have consumption-based models or pricing that scales with usage and scales with number of users. It's so easy to dabble now. You just got to dabble safely and with some consideration, but just don't overthink it. Get in, start trying these things, and you'll learn an awful lot very, very quickly and can move forward from there.
It makes me think of when you said dabble and go lightweight, of the Jim Collins 5 Bullets, 10 Cannonballs. It's in one of those books back there, Good to Great or Great by Choice. One of those two, I'm not sure which book it talks about, but it's about, he says 5 bullets and get your calibration right before you start firing cannonballs. Don't go all in until you've kind of tinkered and experimented to make sure you've got the right range and accuracy on things. So that's a good advice, Glenn, for people to think about, not trying to go from 0 to 100 in one fell swoop, but actually just dabble and figure these things out and do it a bit on the side, as opposed to trying to upset the mothership, sort of do something, get a bit of a side project going in a sandbox environment and try and figure things out before you go too far. What do the other guys got?
No, great points, Glenn. I think also, just from experience, you just start with a small team and also give them, rather than going straight to let's do ideas and we can't visualize it. Everyone sort of finds a visual learners, or they need to see something to work out what's wrong with it. So just build the MVP, build the prototype, start with a small team, and then you'll actually work out what the real problems are, and then you can roll that out with confidence and have the internal buy-in, rather than this thing's being lumped on us by this person, rather than the actual peers or direct team members of the same title have been using this and testing this and had input, and then everyone feels valued because they are, and you actually build something that everyone will use because they actually had a part building it.
Change management, that's a big part of it, isn't it? Yeah.
And maybe identified the most time-consuming part of the business. Is it your file notes? Is it your scheduling meetings? Just pick one small area and really nail it, because you'll find that'll extend onto all the other areas.
It's a good place to begin, isn't it? Find the big chunky bit that takes heaps of time and devote some attention to that, because that's when you get the biggest wins, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. So yeah, good point, Steve. Nick, you got anything there about what someone should do very next thing?
Yeah, I think it's not a sexy one, unfortunately, but like 9 times out of 10, like I said, everything's AI now, and it's quite interesting Because like I've had a lot of advisors come in and say, hey, you're doing some AI stuff, like what should I do? And my first question is like, okay, do you have an AI policy? Because there is a level of risk tolerance. That's okay, whether you're self-licensed or whether you're able to sell, where's the data going to go? How's it processed? What disclaimers do you need to give to your clients that you're recording meetings? Like all that, like I said, it's not sexy, but I think that for me, that's one of the things we did with Direct Wealth. It's like, okay, when we started embarking with AI, it's okay, well, what is our tolerance with regards to AI adoption and putting in place clear expectations of the business? Because we saw it, it's like people say, hey, I can chuck this in ChatGPT. It's like, no, you cannot. Like that is a brief. So I think before you even start the process, because I definitely agree with Glenn and Pat, is that, yeah, just give it a go. But before you put your toes in the water first, it's like, okay, well, especially being self-licensed, it's like, okay, well, as an organization, what are we happy to implement? What do we actually have a core understanding about what we're actually stepping into? Because there's so much hype. It's actually a lot of practice. So it's like, I don't want to be left behind. Like, I feel like if I'm not doing this, I'm going to be pushed away. Or there's the other end where people like the paralysis where it's like, I'm just too fearful. But either end of the spectrum, it's like, okay, well, let's start and say, what is our policies? And then from there, does everyone actually know what, from an employee perspective, what we allow them to do and what like we don't? So yeah, not the sexiest thing, but certainly I think that's kind of the fundamental. And then I would definitely resonate with what everyone else has said and say, okay, well, yeah, what's the thing that's going to give us the best bang for our buck? And that's like what's causing the most amount of friction. And then looking and making an assessment to say, okay, like we're saying before, it's okay, well, how can we whip up a safe prototype, to Glenn and Pat's point, and say, it may not be the most sexy looking tool, but it's going to add value and it's going to solve that problem. Because yeah, depending on different people's competencies and how you can set up, like there is a world of vibe coding where you can start making prototypes. You've got to put it in a secure spot. You can't just whip it up on build.ai and off you go and deploy it into a practice. That's probably going to be a no-no. But we do now live in a world where you don't need to be a developer to create software, which for me is translate that into you can solve problems. And it's kind of interesting, like from my experience, it's like, okay, well, we're now in a world where previously, to Glenn's point, where it's okay, you'd have to go off and employ a custom development team to build you something, and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of time. Where it's okay, you might have someone that is like a paraplanner or someone that may have a more of a technical inclination, but they don't need to know Python. They don't need to know how to code. They can whip up prototypes really quite quickly. But you obviously, the caveat to all that is you need to know how to build it and how to deploy it to a practice in a safe and secure way, which is actually probably a lot more difficult than actually creating stuff through vibe coding, which is kind of ironic, but that's probably my call outs.
Yeah, you can vibe code, but in a safe way. You're right. It's not sexy, Nick, but it's actually sound advice. So it's something that I can relate to because, yeah, a couple of our guys were early adopters and they were thinking, oh, well, I'll take all the names out and I'll just use ChatGPT to do my summary. And I said, well, even with the names not in there, there's a lot of context about that person's situation. So I'm not going to be putting that stuff in a ChatGPT. It has to be a secure environment. So we quickly got ahead of that issue of ourselves, and everyone's very mindful of that because obviously privacy is the number one thing. If you don't keep your client's data private, you are cooked. So not just from a compliance and legal standpoint, but just from a business standpoint, no one's going to stick around as a client if you can't keep their information confidential. So great point and well made. I want to wrap up, guys, with a couple of quick fire questions for you all. I was going to hold that what's next question over for the rapid fire, but we'll do it this way. I want you to give me a rapid fire on what's one tool you can't live without. So it might be the LLM you're using, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. What's the one tool you can't live without? It could be something entirely different. It could be an Xbox. I don't know. What's the one bit of tech and tool you can't live without? And what's one metric that you always track to know whether you're on the right track or not? So what are you tracking? What's the one thing you're tracking to see if you're actually making headway? So let's go around with, first of all, what's the one tool? Who wants to go? Pat, you wanted to kick off?
Yeah. I fly the flag a lot for Wakato, but I've sort of said that one before, but I can't live without that. Obviously, there's your ChatGPTs, etc. But I don't know if I can't live without it, but I'm really exploring it at the moment. And it was recommended by Peter Warren at Fanura Group, but also Daniel Donovan at Verse Wealth. So it's a tool called Whisperflow, which is, hopefully we can link it in the show notes, but it just sort of sits on your device. And at first I thought like it's just like a dictation tool, but it takes the actual context of what you're saying, and you can just speak to it like you would be, prompting an LLM, and it will put that in the right text box. So I can talk a lot quicker than I can type, and it just feels more natural, and it works really well. Like, it's just pretty seamless. It's actually a bit annoying because it has this little like hovering thing in the middle of every screen, which I'm sure I can jump into settings, but it's something I'm exploring right now, and you're having a lot of fun with it.
Sounds like a cool tool, and there was some nodding around the room here, Pat. So Whisper Flow, that one's worth taking a look at. Nick, what have you got that's really exciting you, and that's the one tool you can't live without?
I mean, from a software development perspective, I actually probably would echo Pat in terms of Whisper. So obviously there's different models, and like having the LLM, like that's embedded in I don't go a day without probably spending more than 50% of my time in one of the models. But having Whisper as a tool to be able to interact with those models is definitely helps me a lot. And it's changed my working style as well. It's like the natural language in terms of speaking, I've actually found has given me better results than trying to type out my prompts. So it's how the models interpret you just speaking, even though, because Whisper's great, like, because you go, okay, you and R and you go different, but it actually kind of consolidates it to, okay, yeah, this is what just been said. So yeah, that's probably my big thing at the moment.
Tell me then, Nick, so just give me a run through of practically how that's working for you, because I'm getting a sense of it from what you just said there, and obviously Pat's very much on board with it too. So exactly what, because I'm used to talking to ChatGPT. Glenn and I had a chat about this when we were on our podcast together. We'll stick our AirPods in and we're having a chat to ChatGPT, asking it questions and bouncing stuff around as a bit of a sounding board. So what's Whisper doing that is an extension to that?
Yeah, it's just because I've got it hotkeyed. So like I can be just doing anything and then select, okay, record basically, and then just start talking. So I don't have to kind of stop what I'm doing and go over to ChatGPT and start a conversation. I can just start recording. Because you might see like behind me, we've got another desk. That's where Sam sits. He uses Whisper as well. And it's quite funny. He'll just start talking. And it's like, hey, mate, are you talking to me? Like, what's the kind of the conversation style? It's like, oh, we've been doing this for a while now together in this room. So it kind of got used to when he's talking to Whisper versus when he's actually asking me something. So yeah, I think it's the experience of just being able to like go, okay, yep, got something I want to do, and just clicking your button and start talking.
Yeah, right. Steve, you were nodding your head. Anything you got to add there? Is it Whisper for you as well, or is it something else?
No, probably a bit boring, but we're using Zoom for almost everything now. So meetings, phone calls, SMS, documents, like the document tool is really, really powerful. There's nothing like what we're used to, Word for the last 50 years. And just because everything's in the same tool and it integrates well with, our solution being Salesforce, it's really, really powerful and just way more capability than I think I've seen in most of those communication style tools.
Tell us a bit about that. Zoom documents, because we use Zoom too. We've got Zoom Phone. Mainly we use Teams for these virtual calls, but we use Zoom Phone as our phone system now. We've moved away from the VoIP we used to have, and Zoom's kind of across the whole team now. And I've seen these other tools pop up actually in the little menu bar, and I've not been familiar with how to sort of make use of them. How are you using it, Steve?
Yeah, well, look, rather than emails for internal inside our business, rather than emails and that form of communication, if we're trying to got a project or something we're trying to work through, we use Zoom Docs because you can kind of link in chats, you can link in emails, you can draw whiteboards and workflows in there. You can pull in spreadsheets and data and actually map it. You can even create forms and send questions out to clients and get all of that data put in there. So I guess you'd say, it's got AI in there, but it's kind of like spreadsheets, presentations, Word documents, and a CRM all kind of in a document.
This is kind of a bit off the script, but did you see Zoom's released a reception function now where it'll actually essentially perform like an AI reception greeting for people calling through, and so you don't have to receptionist answer the phone? And no receptionist wants to be doing that forever either, to be honest. It's a bit of a challenging job, constant interruptions. Have you seen that, and have you kind of dabbled in that one yet?
We've seen it. We haven't dabbled in it. We're sort of looking at there. I'm not sure if it's called a reception or something else, but where it listens to the phone call and schedules meetings for you. If you say, Rob, I'll meet you next week on Tuesday, it goes and puts it into the diary. So we haven't rolled any of that out to clients. We're just playing around with it to see what we can use.
Yeah, cool. That's you said it's not very sexy, but actually there's a lot going on there, isn't there? It's an existing tool. Everyone thinks it does one thing, but now it does a whole bunch of other things too. So that's very cool. What about you, Glenn? What have you got that's the one tool you just cannot live without, other than your running shoes?
Look, any tool that can just help me go faster. I've got a mission to deliver everything that I want to do as fast as I can possibly do it. And it is faster than ever before, but it has to stay on an upward curve. The tool I use routinely day to day is Cursor because I'm a nerd, but I don't just use it for AI powered code generation. I use it for writing proposals, for creating engagement letters, for customer presentations, brochures and flyers and web copy and new web pages, whatever it may be. Because I've been able to kind of build up a library of content about me and about Meldus and about the brand and all of our assets in that. So every subsequent task that I need to do with it is just faster. And it's, okay, well, there's the logos and there's the style sheet. And we want to use that branding again. And we use that tone that we use there. And it's just remarkably hands-off and voice-driven. And yeah, it blows me away. And I don't miss doing any of that in sort of Word or PowerPoint or anything else anymore.
That's what I was going to say. I've just been building out a PowerPoint presentation. I'm thinking I should have been using Cursor by the sound of it. I'm familiar with PowerPoint, but it sounds like because it's got all that history and your graphics, your design, all your language, the way you speak, and the knowledge of Meldus, you don't have to kind of re-engineer that stuff. It's kind of all embedded in the system. Is that what Cursor's doing for you? It's kind of become this kind of learned knowledge base of what you're doing. So when you build a presentation or proposal, it's grabbing all that collateral that you've previously created.
Yeah, you basically say, right, I'm doing a new proposal to a client, has some similarities to that previous one. We want the same styling, probably the same table of contents, but it's a different service offering. And just to extrapolate from what you've done before to what you need to do next, I put a little bit of investment into corporate branding and styling to keep it tight. And I'd much rather have that in those lightweight, decoupled corporate assets than embedded in a Word template or a PowerPoint document, whatever, that gets cloned by someone and cloned again by someone else. It becomes kind of source code control for us because they're so important, and becomes much more rinse and repeat in a really controlled way, but still totally AI driven. It's been fascinating.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. It's terrific to be talking to people that have got really cutting edge tools they're using. And I'm thinking like, this is super fun for me, this chat. And I'm sure others will be listening in thinking this is great. So I'll finish on this one point, which is that what is the one metric you guys, I mean, there's one concept of just what's the one number you're tracking? What's the one metric you track to sort of determine whether you're making, is there one overarching sort of North Star metric you track to see whether or not you're making progress on the objectives of the projects you guys set out to achieve?
I'll jump straight into that one. So for us, obviously being very aligned with direct, and this is obviously with work that Sam Patterson has done, is the time to submission on SOAs. So from when a client first engages with an advisor to when that plan has been submitted to power planning. So that time frame or that metric gives us a very clear indication in terms of the effectiveness of both the advisor and the process. But also in addition to that, so it's not just one, there's also the rework on that advisor. So it's one, okay, if you're very quick, but you're passing not so great work over to power planning, that's not effective. So yeah, that's kind of the North Star for us to say, okay, well, as we start implementing tools like Meeting Ally, we're seeing that number get lower and lower and lower. So the time from the advisor speaking to the client to a plan being requested, that's what we're really focusing on to say, okay, yep, we want to see that go down. But then also, as we're leveraging AI to augment the advisor, the quality is also going up. So we're seeing that the rework rates are getting lower and lower as well. That for us is that one metric we say, okay, well, if we see that, and obviously with Direct Wealth, that's charted, so you can see it over time and it's tracked per advisor. So you can see as a practice, are we getting better? But then also it's interesting from an adoption perspective with each advisor, we can see the ones that have been more early adopters onto Meeting Ally and the ones that, because obviously it's a bit of a process with adoption, but you can materially see the ones that are using our stuff and the effects that have been had on the business through that one metric. So that's probably the thing that we focus on.
I love that one, Nick, and every advisor practitioner out there would love that one too. If that's a game changer for businesses, it's a pretty laborious process, isn't it? So if you can get that number down and track that as your key metric, it's a good one. What about the other guys? What do you guys tend to point to as your key metric to know that you're making some headway on the projects you're on?
I'll give a personal one. So I've been on the road or working remotely overseas almost 2 years now. And it can be very easy to sit in the corner, get the optimal desk set up and just crack on and not lose sight of reality, but you can feel a bit of FOMO from what's going on at maybe HQ, even though there isn't HQ anymore. Like you've got people working remotely, but in the same country. It's more of a time zone thing. So I've been trying to spend at least 30% of the week in meetings, or at least just interacting with others, whether that's through the podcast, in terms of the Advice Tech podcast, and also obviously engagements like this, and also trying to just work more in like public or shared spaces. So your mindset just changes. Like you just feel more open and more alive, for lack of a better term. And then maybe more on the tech side, I think we've talked a lot about AI, and I think the tolerance that we have for AI outputs is very different to that of a colleague. So if it's not perfect, it's wrong, if that's an AI response. And so you don't notice it so much if you're using an LLM, so ChatGPT or Claude, because it's very easy to refine it. And often it actually gives you more context. Like it actually makes you give a better prompt second or third time round. And often it gives you what you asked for, not what you wanted. So how to make sure that when we're using these AI steps I mentioned before in flows and processes, that it's giving that right answer the first time so that the team member doesn't have to actually go back and do it themselves. And that's particularly prevalent or relevant in, document generation or things where it's just like in the person's mind, it should have come out just the way I asked for it. So that comes back to prompt templates and context as well. Like it's always about context, but trying to make sure that we have the highest percentage as possible. So over 90% of the first shot was the right shot rather than having to go back to the drawing board.
And I like the point you made there earlier there, Pat, about just that creativity that comes from being around people in that open environment and staying connected to people. Because, you can get in a little tunnel, can't you, if you just sit there and coding all day and sort of developing software. But there's nothing like getting that third-party input. And this is what's about for me too, like listening to you guys talk, just being able to sort of open your mind a bit to what's possible and hear from people's experiences is a really wonderful way to sort of stay connected and keep your creativity rolling. So Steve, Glenn, what have you guys got? That's the metric that you tend to point to as the number one thing you focus on.
Well, having gone through my role at Practify, being utterly driven by an array of metrics that we care deeply about, that our investors care deeply about.
Is there a but there, Glenn?
No. In Meldus now, it's different. It's more qualitative. The thing that drives me at the moment is really making sure that we're a right fit in a relationship. And it's obviously a right fit where I have a conversation with a firm, usually the leaders in the firm, and if they learn something from that, I love it. If I see someone taking a few notes as I'm talking, they're picking something up, which I really love. And similarly, if I learn something from that about the direction they're heading, about who they're working with, their aspirations, the whole bit, if we both come away from that thinking, oh yeah, that was well worthwhile, and we've got a bunch of takeaways and notes off it, then invariably that's a loose metric of success, that was time well spent for both parties. We'll see where it goes from there. And I thrive on that. I love it. I come bouncing out of those conversations thinking, right, we both got something out of that. Maybe there's something to work with here. And so the more of those conversations I can tick off in a given week, that's a good week.
I love it, Glenn. That's actually, we almost need like an energy meter, don't we? Like something that tracks our energy levels and what we're enthusiastic about. Because when you have good conversations, you never come out feeling tired. You actually come out with energy. It actually gives you energy, and you feel like if you could measure that, we try and measure the qualitative experience our clients have with the financial advice we provide, and we do that in a robust and rigorous fashion so we can measure that feeling they have around their finances over time, because there's a measurement each year, the same measurement, and they are self-assessing that change in how they feel about their finances. And I love the idea of measuring qualitative experience, not just about quant data too, but I love that. It's a really, really important point. Steve, what about you? What do you think about what occupies your number one attention as far as metrics and tracking is concerned?
Okay, it's a common theme here with us, but it's activity tracking. You can't improve what you don't know. And, for those of the listeners that are using something like Dynamics or Salesforce, they could probably do that. But unfortunately, the majority of the market is using a solution that just has no capability to do that.
Yep.
But you can get so many free tools now, time trackers or activity trackers that you can just load, not from a whip kind of view of who's doing what, but just to see where everyone's time's getting spent. Because, I would suggest that 90% of practices have no idea what their team are doing day to day in the 8 hours or the 12 hours that they're working every day.
Yeah, that's the truth, isn't it? The Peter Drucker comment was about you can't manage what you can't measure. So measurement's everything to know what you actually are doing and trying to, first of all, if you know what's happening, you can at least then try to pinpoint it and improve upon it. And I think Nick made that point really well at the front end there, just about how tracking that time from point to point to point and actually know if that's going down, then we know we're making some headway. So I love that. And I've taken a lot of your time today, guys. I really appreciate you all rejoining me on the Trusted Advisor podcast. I know that Pat has a plane to catch, so I don't want to take any longer because he'll be starting to fret about getting to the airport on time. So Pat, Nick, Steve, and Glenn, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me again on the Trusted Advisor podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rob.
Cheers, guys.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks for tuning into the Trusted Advisor. I hope today's conversation brought you new insights and inspiration for growing your business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, leave a review and share it with others in the industry. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn for updates on future episodes. Until next time, keep building trust, embracing innovation and driving success in your practice.